The stars were cold and silent in this part of space. No ship had ever traveled here uninvited. No enemy had ever dared to try. This was the heart of the Valorian Empire, protected by 7 great fleets and 3,000 years of perfect security. But tonight, something was moving through the darkness. The HSS Docto was a ship built for shadows. It had no running lights. Its engines made no heat signature. Its hull was covered in a special material that bent sensor waves around it like water flowing around a stone. To any observer, the space where the Docto flew would appear completely empty. Captain Una Park stood on the bridge of her ship with her hands behind her back. She was 46 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many dangerous missions. Her face showed no fear, but inside her chest, her heart was beating fast. "Distance to target?" she asked quietly. Lieutenant Tae Kim checked his instruments. He was her tactical officer, a thin man with quick hands and a mind that worked faster than most computers. 12,000 kilometers to the inner orbital shell. "Captain, we will reach Aethon Prime in approximately 2 hours. Aethon Prime. The throne world of the Valorian Empire. The most heavily defended planet in the known galaxy. Home to the Emperor himself and billions of Valorian citizens who believed they were untouchable. They were about to learn otherwise. Status of the stealth systems? Una asked. Commander Sung Ryu answered from his station at the engineering console. He was a big man with worried eyes and hands that were always busy checking something. The dark matter cloak was his invention, his life's work, and he treated it like a precious child. All systems operating within normal parameters, Sung reported. Power consumption is stable. We are completely invisible to all known Valorian sensor technology. All known technology, repeated Ensign Hana Baek from the navigation console. She was the youngest officer on the bridge, only 25 years old, but she had earned her position through pure skill. What about unknown technology? Then we will find out the hard way, Tae said with a small smile that held no humor. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what he meant. If the Valorians had developed new sensors that could see through the cloak, the Docto would be destroyed within seconds. 7 fleets surrounded them. Thousands of warships. Millions of weapons. One small human ship would not survive even a minute if discovered. Una walked to the main view screen and looked at the image it displayed. Aethon Prime was visible now. A beautiful world of silver and blue. Its cities sparkled like diamonds scattered across the surface. Orbital stations circled it like protective moons. And everywhere, there were ships. Battle cruisers larger than mountains. Carrier vessels holding hundreds of fighters. Weapon platforms that could crack a planet in half with a single shot. The Valorian military was the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen, and all of it was gathered here to protect their emperor. It is beautiful, Hana said softly. It is dangerous, Una corrected. Never forget that. These people have conquered 1,000 worlds. They have destroyed civilizations that existed before humans learned to make fire. They do not know mercy, and they do not accept equals. Which is why we are here, Tae added. Una nodded slowly. Which is why we are here. The mission had been planned for 5 years. The Docto itself had taken another 10 years to build. Humanity had poured its greatest minds, its best resources, and its highest hopes into this one ship and this one mission. For 50 years, the Human Confederacy had tried to establish peaceful relations with the Valorian Empire. They had sent ambassadors. They had offered trade agreements. They had requested cultural exchanges. Every single attempt had been ignored or rejected. The Valorians did not consider humanity worth noticing. To them, humans were just another primitive species crawling around on the edge of the galaxy. Insignificant. Forgettable. Certainly not worthy of respect or attention. The Docto was here to change that opinion. Captain, Hana said suddenly, her voice sharp with concern. I am detecting something unusual in the defense grid. Una turned quickly. Explain. The orbital defense platforms are arranged in overlapping patterns. There should be no gaps in their coverage. But I am seeing a gap, a small window where no sensors are watching. Tae leaned forward. That is impossible. The Valorians are obsessive about their security. They would never leave a gap. I am telling you what I see, Hana said firmly. She pointed at her screen. Right here. The gap appears for approximately 15 minutes every 20 hours. It is small, but it is real. Yuna walked over to look at the screen. Hana was right. There was a gap in the coverage. A tiny blind spot that moved through the defensive grid like a shadow. Could this be a trap? Sung asked nervously. They could be trying to lure us in. Possible, Yuna admitted. But also possible that someone inside the Empire wants us to succeed. Who would want that? Tay asked. Someone who is tired of war. Someone who sees what we are trying to do. Yuna studied the gap carefully. Or someone who wants to watch everything burn. Either way, this is our path. She made her decision quickly, as she always did. Hana, plot a course through the gap. We will use it to reach the inner orbit. Understood, Captain. The Docto changed direction slightly, adjusting its path to intercept the gap when it appeared. The ship moved like a ghost through the enemy fleet, passing within kilometers of warships whose crews had no idea anything was there. Minutes became hours. The tension on the bridge grew thicker with every passing moment. Sung watched his instruments constantly, looking for any sign that the cloak was failing. Tay kept his fingers near the weapon controls, ready to fire if they were discovered. Hana focused entirely on her navigation, guiding the ship through the maze of defenses with incredible precision. And Yuna watched everything, saying nothing, her face as calm as stone. Finally, after what felt like forever, Hana spoke. We are through. We have reached the inner orbit of Aethon Prime. Tay exhaled loudly. Sung slumped in his chair. Even Yuna allowed herself a small breath of relief. Position? She asked. 600 kilometers above the capital city. We have a direct line of sight to the Imperial Palace. 600 kilometers. Close enough to see the lights of the city. Close enough to read the names on the ships guarding the Emperor. Close enough to launch an attack that would change history forever. But that was not their mission. Not yet. Now we wait, Yuna said. We hold this position until we receive further orders. No one makes a sound. No one touches anything unless absolutely necessary. We are ghosts. We do not exist. The crew nodded silently. They understood. Below them, the Valorian Empire continued its normal day. People worked and laughed and lived their lives without any idea that a human warship was watching them from above. Their defenses had failed, their security was broken, and they did not even know it. The humans had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Citadel was the largest military station ever built. It hung in orbit above Aethon Prime like a metal moon, filled with thousands of officers and the most advanced technology the Valorian Empire had created. From here, Grand Admiral Vorath commanded all 7 defensive fleets. From here, the safety of the Emperor was guaranteed, or so everyone believed. Sub-Commander Drin was a young officer who worked in the sensor monitoring division. His job was simple and boring. He sat at his console for 12 hours every day, watching screens that never showed anything unusual. Nothing unusual ever happened in the orbit of Aethon Prime. That was the whole point of having 7 fleets. But today, Drin saw something that made his blood turn cold. It started as a small flicker on his gravitational sensors. A tiny disturbance, barely noticeable. Most officers would have ignored it. But Drin was careful. Drin paid attention to details, and this detail was wrong. He ran a diagnostic check on his equipment. Everything was working perfectly. He checked the readings again. The disturbance was still there. Something was displacing gravity in a way that made no sense. Something large was moving through space. But when Drin looked at the visual sensors, he saw nothing but empty darkness. That cannot be right, he muttered to himself. He called his supervisor, an older Valorian named Officer Vex, who had worked this job for 40 years and had never seen anything worth worrying about. Look at this, Drin said, pointing at his screen. These gravitational readings. Something is wrong. Vex looked at the screen for 3 seconds, then shrugged. Sensor noise. It happens sometimes. Run another diagnostic. And stop wasting my time. I already ran a diagnostic. The sensors are fine. Then it is probably a small asteroid or comet debris. Nothing to worry about. The readings suggest something much larger than an asteroid. Something ship-sized. Vex laughed out loud. Ship-sized? Inside our defensive perimeter? Without being detected by any of our fleets? He shook his head like Drin was a foolish child. Impossible. The very idea is ridiculous. Go back to work. Go back to work. Drin watched his supervisor walk away. He looked back at his screen. The disturbance was still there. In fact, it seemed to be getting stronger. He knew he should let it go. Vex was probably right. It was probably nothing. But something deep in his gut told him that something was very wrong. For the next 8 hours, Drin tracked the anomaly. It moved slowly through the inner orbital zone, almost like it was trying to avoid detection. That was what worried him most. Natural objects did not move carefully. Natural objects did not behave as if they were hiding. Finally, Drin made a decision that would change his life forever. He sent a direct message to Grand Admiral Vorath himself. This was breaking every rule and protocol. Junior officers did not contact the Grand Admiral directly. There were chains of command. There were proper procedures, but Drin was certain now that something was wrong, and he could not ignore it any longer. 20 minutes after he sent the message, 2 armed guards appeared at his station. "Sub-Commander Drin," one of them said. "The Grand Admiral wants to see you." Immediately, Drin followed the guards through the long corridors of the Citadel. His hearts were beating so fast he thought they might burst. He had never been to the command level before. He had never even seen the Grand Admiral in person. The command center was enormous, filled with screens and displays showing every corner of the Valorian Empire. Officers rushed back and forth, managing the greatest military force in galactic history. And at the center of it all, sitting on a throne-like chair, was Grand Admiral Vorath. Vorath was ancient. He had commanded the Valorian fleets for 300 years. He had won 100 wars. He had personally designed the defensive system around Aethon Prime. He was brilliant, dangerous, and absolutely certain of his own superiority. Beside him stood Counselor Mira, one of the Emperor's diplomatic advisors. Drin had heard of her. She was one of the few Valorians who had actually met humans, years ago, during a failed attempt at negotiation. "So," Vorath said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber, "you are the young officer who believes there is an invisible ship hiding in our orbit." Drin stood as straight as he could. "Yes, Grand Admiral. The gravitational readings are unusual. I believe they require investigation." "Thank. There. Well. Revertang's prize. You believe." Vorath smiled. But there was no warmth in it. "And how many years of experience do you have?" 4 years, Grand Admiral. 4 years. I have been protecting this world for 300 years. I built these defenses with my own hands. I know every ship that enters and leaves this system. And you think something got past me? Drin did not know what to say. He had expected this reaction. But he also knew what he had seen. "Show me your data," Vorath commanded. Drin handed over a data tablet containing all his readings. Vorath looked at it briefly, then passed it to Counselor Mira. "Background noise," Vorath said dismissively. "Meaningless data fluctuations. This happens from time to time." But Mira was studying the data more carefully. Her expression did not change, but her eyes moved quickly across the screen. "Grand Admiral," she said slowly, "these readings are consistent with a mass of approximately 800,000 tons moving through our inner orbital zone." "Impossible," Vorath said. "I agree, it should be impossible. And yet the data is clear." Before anyone could respond, every alarm in the command center began screaming at once. Red lights flashed. Officers shouted and ran to their stations. The massive screens flickered and then displayed a single message that was being broadcast on every communication channel in the system. A human voice, calm and clear, speaking perfect Valorian. "Good morning. We come in peace. For now," the message repeated, over and over, on every frequency, on every channel, across the entire system. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The idea that a human ship could be inside their defenses was so impossible, so unthinkable, that their minds refused to accept it. Then Grand Admiral Vorath rose from his throne, and his face was twisted with something he had not felt in 300 years. Fear. "Find them," he roared. "All fleets, battle stations, maximum sensor sweep. Find that ship." Across the space around Aethon Prime, 7 fleets scrambled into action. Thousands of ships changed formation. Millions of weapons powered up. Sensors swept every corner of space, searching desperately for an enemy that refused to be found. But they found nothing. The human ship was there. They could hear its broadcast. They knew it existed. But they could not see it. They could not target it. They could not touch it. Counselor Mira watched the chaos with calm eyes. "I warned you," she said quietly. "Years ago, I warned you about humans. They do not fight the way we expect. They do not announce themselves. They are already inside before anyone knows there is a threat." Vorath turned to her, his eyes burning. "Then how did they do it? How did they get past everything?" Mira shook her head. "I do not know. But perhaps that is exactly the point." The Grand Admiral slammed his fist against his throne. "Find them. I do not care what it costs. Find them now." But the humans remained hidden. They sat in the darkness, invisible and patient, broadcasting their simple message of peace, while the most powerful military in the galaxy tore itself apart trying to locate them. The panic had begun, and it was only the start. 18 hours had passed since the broadcast began. 18 hours of searching, 18 hours of failure. On the bridge of the HSS Docto, Captain Una Park stood at her usual position, watching the chaos unfold around her invisible ship. The Valorian fleets were everywhere now, moving in tight patterns, scanning every piece of space they could reach. Fighters darted back and forth like angry insects. Massive battleships swept their sensors across the void again and again, and still, they found nothing. "They are getting closer," Lieutenant Tae Kim reported from his tactical station. "Their search patterns are becoming more organized. At this rate, they will accidentally stumble across our position within 6 hours." Una nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Valorians were not stupid. They might not be able to see the Docto, but they knew it was somewhere, and they were narrowing down the possibilities. "Status of the cloak?" she asked. Commander Sung Ryu looked up from his engineering console. His face was pale and covered in sweat. Dark circles under his eyes showed that he had not slept since the mission began. "The system is under strain," he admitted. "We have been running at full power for too long. The dark matter containment fields are starting to fluctuate. If we do not reduce power soon, we risk a catastrophic failure." "What happens if the cloak fails?" "We become visible instantly. Every ship in the system will detect us at the same moment." Ensign Hana Bake made a small sound of worry. Tay shook his head slowly. Everyone understood what that would mean. Surrounded by 7 fleets, thousands of weapons pointed at them from every direction, they would not survive more than a few seconds. "Can you extend the operating time?" Una asked. Sung hesitated. "I can try some modifications. Maybe buy us another 4 hours. But Captain, the system was never designed to run this long. Every hour we stay here increases the risk." "Understood. Do what you can." The bridge door opened, and Ambassador Jisoo Han walked in. She was a tall woman with calm eyes and a steady voice. Unlike the military officers, she wore simple civilian clothes. She was not here to fight. She was here to talk. "Captain Park," Jisoo said, "I believe it is time to move to the next phase." Tay turned in his chair. "Ambassador, with respect, any communication we send could help them trace our position." "They already know we are here, Lieutenant. What they do not know is what we want. Right now, they are afraid. Fear without understanding leads to desperate action." Jisoo moved to stand beside Una. "We need to give them something besides fear. We need to give them hope." Una considered this carefully. The ambassador was right. The mission was never about hiding forever. It was about sending a message that could not be ignored. "What do you suggest?" she asked. "A direct diplomatic communication to their leadership. Not a broadcast to everyone, but a specific message requesting formal talks. Show them we are not here to attack. Show them we want peace." Tay was skeptical. "They will never agree to negotiate while we are inside their space. It would look like weakness." "Perhaps. Or perhaps they are more afraid of what happens if they refuse." Jisu's voice was calm but firm. "We have shown them our capability. Now we show them our intention. That is how diplomacy works." Yuna made her decision quickly. "Do it. Prepare the diplomatic transmission." While Jisu worked on the message, Tay called Yuna over to his station. "Captain, there is something I need to tell you. I have been running calculations since we arrived." He lowered his voice, so only she could hear. "If things go wrong, if they find us and attack, the Docto can survive long enough to launch one precision strike." "What kind of strike?" Tay pointed at his screen. A target was highlighted in red, located on the surface of Aethon Prime, the Emperor's palace. A direct hit would kill the Emperor and most of his immediate family. It would throw the entire empire into chaos. Civil war, power struggles, maybe even complete collapse. Tay's face was serious. "We would not survive the counterattack. But neither would their government." Yuna stared at the target on the screen for a long moment. "You have been planning this since we arrived. It is my job to plan for every possibility. And you believe this is necessary?" Tay met her eyes directly. "I believe it should be an option. If they force our hand, if they give us no choice, then we should make sure they remember this day forever." Yuna was silent for several seconds. Then she placed her hand on Tay's shoulder. "Lock that plan away," she said quietly. "We do not use it unless there is absolutely no other choice. We are here to prevent a war, not start one." Tay nodded, but his hand remained near the targeting controls. On the Citadel, Grand Admiral Vorath was facing the worst crisis of his 300-year career. He stood in the command center, surrounded by officers who were too afraid to give him bad news. The search had found nothing. The sensor sweeps had detected nothing. The human ship was still out there, invisible, unreachable, mocking everything he had built. When the diplomatic transmission arrived, requesting formal negotiations, Vorath almost destroyed the console displaying it. "They want to talk?" he roared. "They invade our space, humiliate our defenses, and now they want to talk?" Counselor Mira stepped forward. "Grand Admiral, I recommend we accept their request." "Accept? You want me to negotiate with invaders? I want you to gather information." Mira's voice was calm and reasonable. "We cannot fight what we cannot find. But if we talk to them, we might learn something. Where they came from, how they got past our defenses, what technology they are using." Vorath glared at her. "And what if they use the negotiations as a trick? What if they attack while we are distracted? If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. They have been inside our orbit for almost a full day. They could have struck at any target they wanted. They did not." Mira paused to let her words sink in. "That tells us something important, Grand Admiral. They do not want war. They want something else. And we need to find out what." Vorath was silent for a long time. His pride screamed at him to refuse, to hunt down the human ship and destroy it no matter the cost. But his experience told him that Mira was right. He needed information. He needed to understand what he was facing. "Fine," he said finally. "We will agree to preliminary talks. But I want every available ship continuing the search. And if we find them during the negotiations, we destroy them immediately." The message was sent. The Valorian Empire agreed to talk. On the Docto, the crew received the response with a mixture of relief and tension. The immediate danger had decreased slightly, but everyone knew the situation was still extremely dangerous. "They agreed faster than I expected," Jisoo observed. "They are scared," Yuna replied. Scared people sometimes make quick decisions. Scared people also sometimes make bad decisions. Yuna nodded. That is why we need to be careful. Every word we say from this point forward could mean the difference between peace and war. She looked around at her crew. These people had followed her into the most dangerous space in the galaxy. They had trusted her with their lives. Now everything depended on what happened next. We have come this far, she said. We will not fail now. Prepare for diplomatic contact. And be ready for anything. The standoff continued. Two forces facing each other across the darkness of space. One visible, powerful, afraid. One invisible, small, patient. The next few hours would determine the fate of two civilizations. And somewhere in that endless darkness, the future of humanity hung in the balance. The neutral station floated at the edge of the Aethon system. Far from the searching fleets and the panic of the inner orbit. It was a small trading outpost. Old and forgotten, barely worth protecting. That made it perfect for a secret meeting. Ambassador Jisoo Han arrived first. Her shuttle docked without ceremony, without guards, without weapons. She wore simple diplomatic clothes and carried nothing but a data tablet. It was a deliberate choice. She wanted the Valorians to see that humanity came in peace, not prepared for battle. The meeting room was small and bare. One table, two chairs, gray walls with no decorations. Jisoo sat down and waited. She had expected to meet Grand Admiral Vorath or perhaps Counselor Mira. She had prepared arguments for both of them. She was not prepared for who actually walked through the door. Emperor Kalos IV was younger than Jisoo had imagined. If he were human, he might have looked 30 years old, though Valorians aged differently. His face was serious but not cruel. His eyes held intelligence and curiosity. Not the arrogance she had seen in other Valorian leaders. There was also something else there. Something that looked almost like fear. Ambassador Han, Kalos said, sitting across from her. I apologize for the surprise. My advisors do not know I am here. Jisoo hid her shock behind diplomatic training. Your Majesty, the honor is unexpected. I imagine so. Grand Admiral Vorath wanted to send soldiers to capture you. He believes this meeting is a trap. Kalos smiled slightly, though there was no happiness in it. But I am tired of doing what my advisors want. I want answers, Ambassador, real answers, and I believe you can give them to me. I will answer what I can, Your Majesty. Good. Kalos leaned forward, his eyes intense. Then start with the most important question. How did your ship get past our defenses? Jisoo had expected this question. I cannot reveal technical details. That would compromise the safety of my people. I thought you would say that. So let me ask a different question. Kalos studied her face carefully. Why? Why go through all this risk and effort? Why sneak into our space when you could have simply sent another diplomatic message? Because you would have ignored it. Jisoo's voice was calm but firm. For 50 years, humanity has tried to establish relations with the Valorian Empire. We sent ambassadors, trade proposals, cultural exchanges. Every single attempt was ignored or rejected. Your empire treated us as if we did not exist, because you were insignificant, Kalos said. Small. Weak. That is what my father believed. What his father believed. What everyone believed. And what do you believe, Your Majesty? Kalos did not answer immediately. He looked at the bare walls of the room, thinking carefully. I believe that a species capable of putting a warship in the orbit of my throne world is not insignificant. I believe that ignoring you any longer would be very dangerous. He met her eyes. I believe I need to understand what humanity really is. Then allow me to tell you a story, Jisoo said. Please. Humans evolved on a planet called Earth. It is a beautiful world, but also a deadly one. For most of our history, we were not the dominant species. We were hunted. We were food for creatures bigger and stronger and faster than us. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor, nothing that could protect us. She paused. watching the Emperor's reaction. We survived by learning to hide, by watching our enemies and understanding their patterns, by moving without being seen or heard. When we finally developed technology, we carried those survival instincts with us. Jisoo leaned forward slightly. Your empire mastered energy. You learned to bend light, harness stars, create weapons that can destroy planets. You became masters of power and strength. And what did humanity master? Darkness, silence, survival. Jisoo's voice was soft but intense. Every advancement we made came from being threatened, from being hunted, from having no choice except to find another way. Your empire has been the strongest force in the galaxy for 3,000 years. You have never needed to hide. You have never needed to be invisible. We have needed both every single day of our existence. Kalos stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but something genuine. Almost impressed. Ambassador Han, I have met many species. I have heard many explanations. But this is the first time anyone has told me that weakness is strength. It is not weakness that is the strength, Jisoo corrected gently. It is the refusal to surrender. It is the ability to adapt. It is the understanding that surviving matters more than winning. We learned to fight wars that nobody sees. We learned to win battles without firing a single shot. And this mission? This ship in our orbit? That is one of those invisible battles? Yes, Your Majesty. We could have tried to build a fleet large enough to threaten you. It would have taken us 1,000 years. And you would have destroyed us long before we finished. Instead, we built one ship, one small, invisible ship that can go anywhere, that can reach any target, that can deliver any message we choose. A message. Kalos nodded slowly. That is what this is. A message. We wanted you to understand something that words alone could never communicate. We wanted you to know that ignoring us is no longer an option. We can reach your emperor. We can reach your palace. We can reach anything we want. Jisoo's eyes met his directly. But we chose not to attack. We chose to ask for peace instead. That is our message, Your Majesty. We are not your enemy unless you force us to be. Kalos was quiet for a long time. He looked at Jisoo with new understanding, seeing not just a diplomat, but a representative of something far more dangerous than he had imagined. My advisors want war, he said finally. Grand Admiral Vorath wants to hunt your ship until he destroys it. Many in my empire believe that strength is the only answer to any problem. And what do you believe? Kalos stood up and walked to the small window of the meeting room. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. I believe my empire has been alone at the top for too long. We have forgotten what it means to face something we cannot simply crush. We have grown arrogant, blind. He turned back to face Jisoo. And I believe that if I ignore what I have learned today, I will lead my people into a war we cannot win. Then what will you do, Your Majesty? I will return to Aethon Prime. I will speak to my Senate. I will make a decision that will either save my empire or destroy my legacy. He smiled, and for a moment he looked very young and very tired. I hope I am wise enough to make the right choice. So do I, Your Majesty. For all our sakes. Kalos walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Your ship, the one hiding in our orbit. What is it called? The HSS Docto. Docto. What does the name mean? Jisoo smiled. It is named after a small island on Earth. A place that many powers tried to claim throughout history, but that always remained free. We thought it was fitting. Kalos nodded slowly, understanding more than words could express. Then he left, carrying the weight of 2 civilizations on his shoulders, and humanity's future along with it. 1 week later, the Imperial Senate gathered in the Great Hall of Aethon Prime. The hall was ancient and magnificent. Its walls were decorated with the flags of conquered worlds, trophies from 1,000 victories. Golden light streamed through windows made of crystal. Every senator wore ceremonial armor that had been passed down through generations. This was the heart of the Valorian Empire, the place where history was made. Today, history would be made again. Emperor Kalos IV stood at the center of the hall, facing hundreds of senators arranged in a great circle around him. Grand Admiral Vorath stood nearby, his face dark with anger and shame. Counselor Mira waited quietly in the shadows, watching everything with careful eyes. Senators of the Empire. Kalos began, his voice echoing through the massive chamber. 1 week ago, something impossible happened. A human warship entered the inner orbit of our throne world. It passed through 7 defensive fleets. It avoided 3,000 years of security measures. It sat above our capital city for 19 hours before we even knew it was there. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some senators looked angry, others looked frightened. All of them looked uncomfortable. When we finally detected their presence, we could not find them. Our sensors could not see them. Our weapons could not target them. 7 fleets searched continuously, and they found nothing. Kalos paused, letting his words settle. The humans were invisible, inside our most sacred space. And there was nothing we could do about it. Grand Admiral Vorath stepped forward. Your Majesty, this is exactly why we must respond with force. The humans have embarrassed us in front of the entire galaxy. If we do not punish them, other species will think we are weak. They will test our defenses. They will challenge our authority. Others will test us regardless. Kalos replied calmly. The humans have already shown what is possible. Punishing them will not change that reality. The only question now is what we do next. An old senator named Vorn stood up from his seat. The honor of the Empire demands revenge, Your Majesty. We cannot allow this insult to stand. Honor? Kalos's voice turned sharp. Let me tell you about honor, Senator. The human ship was in our orbit for 19 hours. 19 hours. During that time, it could have destroyed the Citadel. It could have bombed our cities. It could have launched an attack on this very palace and killed me. He looked around the hall. Do you know what they did instead? They asked to talk. They asked to talk. Silence fell over the chamber. They did not come here for destruction. They came here to prove a point. For 50 years, we ignored them. We refused to acknowledge them. We treated them as nothing. Kalos shook his head. So they found a way to make us pay attention. That is not an insult, senators. That is a message. And only fools ignore messages delivered so clearly. Counselor Mira stepped forward. If I may speak, Your Majesty. Kalos nodded. Senators, I am one of the few Valorians who has actually met humans face to face. Years ago, I tried to warn our leadership that they were different from other species we had encountered. I was ignored. She looked around the chamber slowly. I will not be ignored again. The humans have shown us a capability that we cannot match and do not understand. Fighting them would not be a war. It would be a slow destruction of everything we have built. Peace is not weakness. Peace is wisdom. The debate continued for hours. Senators argued back and forth. Some demanded military action. Others urged caution. Grand Admiral Vorath grew more frustrated with every passing minute. But he could not change the momentum of the discussion. Finally, Emperor Kalos raised his hand for silence. I have made my decision, he announced. The Valorian Empire will formally recognize the Human Confederacy as an equal sovereign power. This is the first time in our history that we have granted such status to any species. We will establish diplomatic relations. We will begin trade negotiations. We will treat humanity as we would any other major civilization. The hall erupted into chaos. Some senators applauded, others shouted in protest. Grand Admiral Vorath looked like he had been physically struck. Your Majesty, Vorath said, his voice barely controlled. Kalos turned to face the Grand Admiral directly. The military will accept what I decide. That is the law of our empire. His voice hardened. Vorath, they were in our orbit for 19 hours. They could have killed me. They could have destroyed our government. They could have thrown our entire civilization into chaos. Instead, they asked for peace. That is not weakness. That is mercy. And if we are too proud to accept mercy when it is offered, then we deserve whatever comes next. Vorath had no answer. He stepped back, defeated. Far away, on the bridge of the HSS Docto, Captain Yuna Park watched the broadcast of the Emperor's speech. Her entire crew had gathered around the main view screen, listening to every word. When Kalos announced the recognition of humanity as an equal power, Ensign Hana Baek let out a cry of joy. Lieutenant Tae Kim leaned back in his chair with a look of disbelief. Commander Sung Ryu wiped tears from his face with shaking hands. Ambassador Jisoo Han stood beside Captain Yuna, her expression calm but her eyes bright with emotion. "We did it," Jisoo said quietly. "We actually did it." Yuna nodded slowly. "The mission is complete. It is time to go home." She turned to face her crew. These people had followed her into the most dangerous space in the galaxy. They had trusted her with their lives. And together, they had changed history. "All hands, prepare for departure. We are leaving Valorian space." Tae looked up from his console. "Captain, should we stay cloaked until we are clear of the system?" Yuna thought about it for a moment. Then a small smile crossed her face. "No. Shut down the cloak. Let them see us." Tae blinked in surprise. "Captain? They spent almost 2 days searching for us. Let them know exactly what was sitting in their orbit the entire time. Let them see us leave." The order was given. The dark matter cloak powered down. And for the first time since entering Valorian space, the HSS Docto became visible. Across the system, every sensor detected them instantly. Every Valorian ship turned to look. Every commander, every officer, every citizen watching the news feeds saw the human warship appear from empty space, floating calmly above their capital city. It was not a large ship. It was not bristling with weapons. It did not look particularly impressive or threatening. But everyone who saw it understood what it meant. This small, simple vessel had done what no enemy had accomplished in 3,000 years. It had proven that the Valorian defenses were not perfect. Everything had changed. On the Docto's bridge, Tae watched the Valorian fleets watching them. Thousands of weapons were pointed in their direction, but no one fired. No one even charged their targeting systems. "Do you think they will ever stop being afraid of us?" he asked. Yuna shook her head slowly. "Probably not. But maybe someday they will respect us instead. That would be enough." The Docto began to move. Slowly, gracefully, it turned away from Aethon Prime and headed toward the edge of the system. Every sensor in Valorian space tracked its path. Every eye watched it leave. As the ship passed through the formations of the 7 great fleets, something unexpected happened. Some of the Valorian captains saluted. Their ships dipped slightly, a gesture of respect that was not ordered, not required, but given freely. They were honoring an enemy that had become something else entirely. The Docto reached the edge of the system. Before it jumped to faster than light, Captain Yuna gave one final order. "Open a channel. All Valorian frequencies." Hana opened the channel. Yuna spoke. "This is Captain Yuna Park of the HSS Docto. On behalf of humanity, thank you for listening. We look forward to building a future of peace and cooperation between our peoples. Until we meet again." The channel closed. The Docto jumped to faster than light speed, and in a brilliant flash of light, it was gone. Back on Aethon Prime, Emperor Kalos watched from his private chambers as the human ship vanished into the stars. He stood alone at his window, looking out at the space where the Docto had been, just moments before. "They proved something today," he said softly to himself. "Something the galaxy will never forget. Humanity did not need to conquer the stars. They just needed the stars to know that they could. And now, everyone knew."